our guest tonight, a young man who has a fascinating story, an amazing story, Dr. Micah E. Johnson, who is a college professor. But at 8 years old, he was homeless, and throughout the majority of his life, he was homeless. And so his move from homelessness and overcoming the trauma of all that he went through to become a college professor. And now he has written a one-man show that will be at the University of Florida Phillips Center on the 4th of February at 6 p.m. If you're in the area, you got to make sure you go see it. I'm definitely going to be there. Dr. Johnson, God bless you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
How in the world? Because there's no blueprint for a homeless 8-year-old
Right.
to get from being a homeless 8-year-old and homeless throughout a great deal of your life to college to uh, working on research for the National Institute of Health to a college professor now on stage at the Phillips Center. And this show that you've done has been so embraced. How? What happened? How?
Yeah, that's just it's like the miracle of the human experience. It's like it's unbelievable even to reflect at it, reflect on it myself. It's unbelievable. But the thing about trauma and adversity and discomfort and hurt is you think it's going to be this forever thing, this thing that's eternal. It's going to define you forever. But it's just seasons pass, and for me, it wasn't being always being perfect or always finding a way to get out of it or having a positive experience or a positive perception. For me, it was really just lean toward the light. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do anything particularly, the right way, but just leaning toward the light. So that when I look back, I see dozens and dozens of earth angels who entered
Mm.
my life and helped me, shielded me when the storm was the worst, and when the winds were harshest. Folks shielded me. And it wasn't the people you think. I mean, a lot of, jacked up, broken, a lot of imperfect people were the ones who are responsible for Micah Johnson. Um, uh,
Micah, well, let's start at how did you end up being homeless at 8?
well, this is a lesson in sociology, right? So for me, my homelessness was rooted in a lack of employment opportunities and the introduction of drugs into the Black community. So uh, my folks had to try to navigate life with mass incarceration and crack cocaine. So
Yeah.
these are two great, social nuclear warheads that were targeted at our community. My folks are from Eatonville. I was born there. So this is like a lesson in history and sociology. It's one of the first Black cities in America, if not the first Black city in America. But this town has had challenges, obviously isolated throughout the years, under resourced, marginalized, minoritized. And, my parents had to face things that my grandparents didn't have to face. My parents had to survive segregation and then desegregation, which was
Hmm.
traumatic and hurtful. And then they had to manage life with crack cocaine, these drugs pumping into the communities without resources to combat those things, without funding and federal dollars and the things that other communities received. And then the mass incarceration of men from the community. So that kind of disrupted the family. So honestly, my pops ended up being a single father with 4 children. And
Mm.
the only resources that he could find for a single father was in New York City in the homeless shelter system, the emergency housing shelter system. And that became a frequent pit stop for us, a frequent home for us. And I remember it like it was yesterday. So I would say my father struggled with his own trauma, his own sort of struggles in life, and his own sort of growth, from addiction to dealing with loneliness and dealing with isolation. So he had his own growth. So, but he's also a single father with 4 boys. So the New York system became our home. And that's it. It's really rooted in these complex social dynamics. It wasn't really isolated incident. I think we extreme forms of poverty and homelessness you typically are rooted in these types of dynamics and these types of stories.
Micah, you talked about earth angels. Um, where in your mind were you even thinking about I could possibly go to college and study this life that I have firsthand experience in sociology and mental illness and
Yeah.
trauma? As a matter of fact, the first time that we met, we were doing a symposium on African Americans overcoming the stigma of mental
Hmm.
illness. Was the first time that I met you,
Yep.
and was thoroughly impressed with you then. Had no idea that your life had been something that lived in a way that others would have thought that you would not have made it and been able to do anything.
Right. Well, I didn't always think I could be a professor. I didn't always believe, but there were those who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Um, it's really fascinating. It's such a interesting dynamic to think back on things. But in a way, February 4th at 6 p.m., this is the story. A lot of young people gravitate toward me because of the hip hop dynamic, but also because I come from those environments and I managed to kind of escape, survive some of the things they're dealing with. And they always ask me how. And this story kind of is about how. And the answer lies in young people, the way young people treat each other, the friendships that form, the communities that form, and the positive ones, not the negativity. Again, just leaning toward the light. And I think that that's what this story is all about. So everyone, I speak a lot, and people always want to know, they think I'm some sort of story about resilience, but really it's a simple story about when things were the harshest they'd ever been, and when despair was too bitter to breathe air. It was strangers. It was ordinary people that I met who gave me a tremendous amount of concern. They gave me love. They showed me character. They showed me care. And those are the things that I sort of hung on to and that got me to the next level. And also some of those teachers in these really underserved schools, these really harsh environments, some of the mentors, the counselors, and the teachers were the ones that really gave me hope. So I found a lot of hope in people that would volunteer to mentor underserved youth. Thank you. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I'm one of those graduates. I'm an alumni of those programs, and I thank you for those efforts. So, for all the volunteers and all the teachers who, by choice, teach in these sorts of underserved environments, I am a product of that work. I'm a part of that legacy. And this story on the fourth is really about that. What is resilience? How do we overcome trauma, whether it be biographical trauma in our own lives, or whether it be historical trauma dealing with systemic racism and all these different huge macro level factors? How do we get through this? And the story is very, very simple. The answer, it's about how we treat each other, those friendships we form, how we embrace our art and our culture as a protective mechanism, as a protective factor, and how do we build community? Now, when we find ourselves without friends, without community, without our culture and our art, then it becomes a very vulnerable, very dangerous situation. My success story is standing on the shoulders of dozens and dozens of amazing people, and also one of engage and leverage your culture, your art, stand on the shoulders of folks in your friendships and your community, and believe that you're worthy of love and that you're worthy of good things to happen. So that was me. And there were times when it was I was completely hopeless, but I remembered that love. I remembered those lessons from mentors and teachers. I remembered that care, and it made me believe that I was worthy, that I was valuable, that I was something of goodness. My origin is a story about good things, um, and so I could do it, and
Micah,
that's what I did.
Dr. Johnson, all of the things that you're saying are incredible. For these children, because the average age of a homeless person in America, people think of homeless people as the people that you see at the intersections with the cardboard. But we have so many homeless children in America. The average age is 8 years old. Um, for those children, I mean, how in the world? I mean, you're in an environment, you're seeing all kinds of things. What was the worst thing that happened to you?
Oh man, it's a 5-way tie.
A
Um,
five-way tie.
it's about 2.5 million homeless children on average each year in America. In Florida, the rates are akin to a homeless child in every single Florida classroom. So it doesn't look like what you think it looks. A lot of people live in cars and abandoned buildings, abandoned apartments, and all sorts of places, motels, anywhere they can, sofa
In the
circles.
woods, in the
In
woods.
the woods, yes.
Yeah.
People, there's all sorts of styles of homelessness and houselessness and transient lifestyles. The worst thing that happened, I had a lot of worst things that happened. And one of the worst things I'll talk to you from a child's perspective. As a child, one of the worst things that happened was moving. The school mobility, the residential mobility. This is an everyday experience with this type of lifestyle and this type of condition. But it was the moving when you finally break through as that stinky, smelly, homeless, hopeless kid, and then you finally find your tribe and your community, and then you have to move. That was the trauma for me as a kid because kids, the friendships are so important for shaping social skills and finding hope and just finding yourself. And when I had to move and meet these people, fall in love with these people, and then move, man, that was tough. But that's something that's not talked about enough. The that separation from people you love, constant, chronic separation, was traumatic for me.
Do you think that, and the title of your one man show is Never Had a Friend? Is that why
Yes, you picked up on it, but
you
it's
gave it
really
that?
that title is an artistic piece in itself. It has 4 or 5 different meanings at least. But one of the core meanings is yes. And I was hoping folks went to the show and picked that up for themselves, but you tackled it right away. That's it. Folks may watch the show and say, "What do you mean he doesn't have friends? He has cool friends." But the moving is why you never had friends. Constantly relocating, always a new kid. That's when it's hard to have true friendships.
How
So
how are your other brothers and sisters? It was 4 boys. How are your other brothers?
was completely jacked up, out of control. No, I'm just kidding. We're all doing. Everyone, all of my brothers managed to get a college degree. All of us.
Really?
Different times at our own pace, but we all got college degrees from major universities. Um, we are doing the best we can, as men trying. We're leaning toward the light. I would say my brothers and I are all grinding and leaning toward the light. Yes, there are pieces of us that are missing from all the toil and everything we've been through. And yes, we have our own growth, trajectories. We have our own mental and behavioral health things to kind of think about and fight through. But I'm extremely proud of my brothers and have a great deal of uh, perspective and grace when it comes to them because I understand the journey and what they've been through. And the thing about my brothers that's really cool is that it allows me to have grace with a lot of other people because I can see my brother's flaws, but I also can see the iceberg underneath the tip out of the water. I can see the iceberg under the water of all the things they've been through, history, biography, all these things, trauma, disadvantage, and isolation, and loneliness, and untreated mental health disorders. I see these things and I can have grace because I understand what it's like. And I can extend that grace and that lens, that paradigm, that perspective to everyone. And so I thank my brothers for that lesson. And I only had that lesson because I'm in the mud with them. I went through it all with them. I know what they've been through. So to see them, I just get very proud of them. But what if we all had that perspective? What if we could somehow, we're in traffic and some jerk cuts us off and we feel that anger towards them. But what if we could really just for a moment think about what's underneath that action?
Yeah.
What's the iceberg underneath that? And can we be proud of them and have grace for them for just trying to get to work today and trying to get through? And I mean, this really is the human experience. And it's really about understanding each other and having that grace with each other.
Doctor, when you started moving through college and then on to master's and starting to work on your PhD, what made you think that I can go and do more, that I can keep doing this?
Yeah. I almost flunked. I started with community college.
Uh-huh.
Almost failed my first semester, like flunked out of community college. Um, but I didn't. I think there's something, um, you got to have grit. You got to have some fight. And I think I just had a little fight in me, and I wasn't going down without a fight. So that's one piece of it, is a little bit of grit. Um, but also those teachers in high school made me believe in myself. I mean, not just high school, middle school, elementary school. There's a ton of teachers. Not everyone. Some of these teachers are not doing their part and making things a lot worse. But there's a few awesome teachers that had long term lasting impacts on me and my confidence. And because my social and my environment and my community was so, disadvantaged and disorganized and just uncomfortable, school became a safe haven. So I always saw school as a shelter, and I was going to stay there as long as I could. And academic
Interesting.
success, just having effective teachers gave me confidence. It's really interesting. Poor teachers robbed me of confidence, made me feel like I couldn't do this. But effective teachers, who had compassion and passion, they made me believe that I could do this because I did well in those courses. So I just wanted to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And I really believed that I was better, because of the love my friends showed me. These are people in the hood, people in the trenches, people in the gutter. Because of the love they showed me, because of the love the teacher showed me, because those people, those earth angels, the love they showed me, the encouragement they gave me, made me say, okay, I'm just going to lean toward the light and keep doing this and keep trying. I never thought I would be a professor, though. I just kept thinking ahead, thinking ahead. It wasn't until I graduated from Florida State University, and I just really wanted to understand what the heck we experienced. The children who were in the disadvantaged areas, the underserved areas, the marginalized areas. I wanted to understand what was these dynamics that were governing our lives. And that's what led me into sociology, and that's what led me into my PhD. Again, leaning toward the light, one step at a
What does that mean to you? You're saying leaning toward the light.
So it's like,
What does that mean to a person watching who's in darkness? What's the light? Where's the light?
where's the light? Yeah. So there's light even in the darkest moments is where you see the light the brightest. So leaning toward the light is just, you know, just leaning toward positivity and positive people and avoiding those traps and the toxicity and the darkness. What are the traps for young Black youth? Obviously, violence is a trap. Obviously, crime is a trap.
Not having your mother is a trap.
Right, right, right.
How did you manage that? How did you boys manage that?
Well, that's a hard one. Everyone has a mommy. You find that does have to do with positive perspective. You find the surrogate mommies, and then you'll find that, man, there's a lot of mommies that are out here. In a way, it's a very hard thing. It's a very like difficult thing to think about. And I want folks to envision someone. This was me trying to imagine what my mom looked like when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, 7, trying to imagine what she looked like, because I thought no one had mommies. And then I was shocked when I went to school to find that everybody had mommies. So that was a cognitive dissonance for me. But what came out of that was I did end up meeting my biological mother. I did end up finding surrogate mothers. My acting coach became a mother. The person down the road, became a mother. These folks in the neighborhood had this mother-like influence on me, and I was able to receive that because I was longing for that, but I was able to receive it. So if you really think so, in darkness being without mommy, you start seeing, oh, there's mommies everywhere, there's people everywhere with a mother spirit, with a there's motherhood all around me, whether it be big older kids in the school, big sisters in the community. There's mothers everywhere. And they may not look like the ideal mothers, but that motherhood exists, and you can't see that sometimes if you are focused, if you only think about just, I just have this one mommy and I miss her. But if you really truly are in darkness, you'll find a lot of mommies, and that's what it is to lean toward the light. It's like, you don't need a perfect mother, you just need motherhood, and lean toward that. Spend more time with that, cherish that as your mother. Things like gangs. Man, there was a time in my life where I loved gangs and gangs loved me, but that's a trap. And you just lean away from that. Let me lean away from gangs
How
and
did
lean
you get
more.
out of that? You said they loved you, you loved them.
Yeah,
That was a comfort zone. That was a family. That was a
that
nucleus.
was a brotherhood. That was a family. And
Yeah.
but when you start experiencing the darkness, the violence starts getting worse. It becomes less about brotherhood and more about manipulation. You could find that brotherhood in a social group, in a fraternity, in any sort of group of like-minded individuals. And when I was in middle school, it was the thing. If if you were isolated, you didn't have a family or a tribe, the gang started recruiting you. And again, it was a brotherhood. That part of it really spoke to me. But
Mhm.
the part that didn't speak to me was the darkness, the bullying, the criminality and the violence. So, for me, it became, okay, I want to join a football club then to find that sense of community. That's what I mean by leaning toward the light. Some people will quit football because of a gang. That's leaning toward darkness. But it's not that you have to be perfect, but just make life easier for yourself by, you can feel light and darkness. And if you don't, just think, what are the traps? Because sometimes kids do get confused. Young people get confused. But what are the traps in my life? The big traps. You know what they are. If you think about them, you can write them down and just lean away from those things. I wanted to drink and smoke, and well, basically do drugs like my friends, but I know that that's a trap. I know that that's what hurt my own personal life. So let me lean away from that, and let me shy away from that. Let me spend less time with folks who engage in that type of coping, and let me spend more time with folks who don't do those things. That's what I mean. Just leaning a little bit, because people, sometimes the elders in the community speak to young people like they got to make these harsh, sharp turns and be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You can still be jacked up and messed up. But just as long as you're tilting toward positivity and away from the traps, away from darkness, you'll be on the right path.
Dr. Micah Johnson has written a one man show called Never Had a Friend. It will be on stage at the Phillips Center here in Gainesville, Florida, February the 4th. What made you want to write this down and then perform it?
Great question. I never spoke about this. It was a really personal experience for me. The
Because
process,
people see you now
right,
and have absolutely no idea unless you tell them,
right.
because there's nothing about you that looks like what you're talking about that you went through.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I always knew, always had this story in my mind to tell, but it was one of those things where it was almost a trauma response just to be quiet about it. I didn't want to tell anybody. It was really that personal and that influential of a story to me. I never spoke about it. 25 years. The first time I spoke about it was as an artistic piece, which is telling. And when folks watch the show, they'll know exactly why, or like, I see why it came out as an artistic piece. But you know what? I think it also took so long to tell the story because I didn't know the ending. So when I finally got a job as a professor and I'm moving into this nice house, I've made it. I'm done. Finally, I'm done. I've escaped poverty. I've made something of myself. And in like cleaning out these old boxes, I found this young person who I love and I miss that person. And that person was an artist. Well, what's that person's story? And I wanted to tell that story. And then I saw also simultaneously the decline of friendship, especially among men when they get to our age, my age. When you get to your 30s, you've lost the community you've had. in college. You used to live with people, your community, your best friends. You don't live with them anymore. And then you fade into a phone call, then that fades into a wedding or a funeral. And then you're really isolated. And America has become more and more isolated. We really have diminished friendships. And I want to remind people of the power of those friendships and the importance of community to sustain those things throughout your life for your own mental wellness. So, why does mental health wellness, these dramatic increases in mental health problems? Well, that's the isolation, that's the lack of community, that's the engaging, finding some source of community and some sense of purpose and value in capitalistic material possessions instead of finding it in real people and real relationships. And that can have a detrimental effect on your mental health. So I wanted to tell it for those reasons. And the story was complete now. I wanted to tell this child's story, who I love and I miss. I wanted to talk to him about what was that pivotal moment in your life. And for me, it was a moment where I met an amazing teacher who exposed me to art as a coping mechanism instead of devices of death and destruction. And it was the day I met a friend, my best friend, who taught me what love was, who instilled in me a profound idea that I can't escape, that I'm worthy of healthy, positive relationships, the best kind of relationships, the best kind of love. And that's who I am, and that's what I deserve. And instilling that in me, it carried me forward. And so to this day, I don't accept toxic relationships, only the best kind of relationships, only healthy, positive, light bringing, luminescent relationships. And I think that that is my saving grace. It helped me escape a lot of negativity in the world.
And your dad?
My dad,
Yeah.
uh, my dad actually has been clean for 20 years. He had his journey. He's his own success story in a way. The single father, heartbroken, dealing with mass incarceration, dealing with addiction, managed to get clean, um, stay free, and love God. And that's the man he is today, a man who is clean for 20 years. He loves his children still, and he is using his story to empower people who are also dealing with really difficult circumstances.
What was it like for you, those times when you walk across the stage and seeing your father's face?
My father was incarcerated when I graduated, but he was there when I graduated with my PhD.
He was?
And on my mind, both times is the same thing. I don't know if you've ever seen, like, if you watch the NBA or if you know about masculinity, when you dunk on somebody and you make that face and you just in the zone and you locked in and that aggression becomes positive. That was me. I was in the same mindset. I had the mindset of Ice Cube, Tupac, and Kodak Black. I was in I was it wasn't anger. It was it was like a melting guitar face in a way. It was like no one can stop me. You know, it's like I have power, real power. I'm unstoppable, and I earned everything I got here. It was like bring it on. That's how I felt. It was almost. I'm sure I scared some people, but that's the
Why?
mentality.
What were you doing? Like when you grabbed your daddy, was it like when
Just
black
a
guys see
really
each other,
focused face. You know? No,
it
just
looks
like
like
a
they're
real.
beating each other up, but they're just hugging.
Yes, that's what it was like. And it was just like I was just locked in thinking about all the kids that didn't make it. I had survivor's remorse and I was just like, yeah, we made it. I'm representing everyone who has disadvantaged trauma, whoever felt like a loser, who was ever told they couldn't do anything or be anything. I'm representing everybody. Y'all my people, y'all my tribe, and let's do this. And so that's the energy I was on. And it felt great, but also I was just still in the zone. I was just very proud of myself, and that energy
Do
came
you
off.
remember looking in your daddy's face when you
Yeah,
came
we
off?
had a talk. I remember, but you know, it was sort of like we sort of sat back. It was surreal. We were both numb. My dad and I were very numb. We couldn't. It didn't register right away, like what the achievement of becoming a professor and getting a PhD, especially doing it with a perfect 4.0.
Wow.
It especially at a PWI in the South. It was it didn't hit us right away, but we celebrated and we actually spent that day raising resources for homeless families at Grace Marketplace. So full circle.
Wow. When we come to this show, and I hope that everyone who's watching in the Gainesville, Florida area, go out of your comfort zone and call Pam Davis at Gainesville Public Housing or Ken at Alachua County Public Housing and ask, how do I bring some children, or out at SWAG, um, or children from your church, to bring them to the Phillips Center, a space that they may not even think that they can go for any reason, but to
Right.
be able to go to the Phillips Center in Gainesville, Florida, and see somebody who was homeless, who could have been just checked off. And now, not only is he a professor at a university, but he will be on stage February 4th performing a show that he wrote, not getting anybody else's stuff. This is a show that he wrote, director, producer, everything. This is freaking amazing. Congratulations, Dr.
Thank
Micah.
you, thank you. And yeah, man, I just hope to connect, and I hope to really what I want folks to take away is you can do anything, you can overcome anything, trauma, adversity, all of these things, um, with the proper amount of social support, not the quantity. Just one positive relationship can help you overcome a mountain of trauma and adversity and disadvantage.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
So motherly proud of you.
Thank
So
you.
motherly proud of you. And I am looking forward to seeing you on stage. And you're going to hear a real loud cheering. That's going to be me. And I'm just I thank God for keeping, preserving you through some things, and then delivering you from some other things, and then placing you on this higher ground with more great things for you to do. Your story is not over.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you so much for being with us tonight on Sisters of Wellness, sharing your incredible story to encourage, uplift, and inspire. Thank you all so much for joining us. I do hope that you will share this show. Let's see here. We have some comments here. Louise McKinney says, awesome. Yes. Um, yeah, let's see here. Will said, enjoying Dr. Johnson tonight. The beginning of your story was sad, but what a beautiful ending. Thank you, Louise, for watching. I appreciate it. And again, please share this story with others. There's so many hurting people. There's so many hurting children. As
Mm.
Micah pointed out at the beginning, drugs that have been pumped in our community, intentionally not hiring men. We didn't even get to talk about the trauma of Black men in America and how it is America's story. So you're going to have to come back so
Yep.
that we can talk about that.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
wait.
yeah, let's schedule that so that we can do that, and then just talking about African Americans and mental illness. We're not prepared to deal with it. We don't know what to do,
Hmm.
and we need all of the help that we can get. And so I thank you for what you're doing, and we pray that God continues to open doors to lead and guide you to the light.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment and